What is up, all my kaiju friends and fans? This is Phil, the Kaiju King, from my collection room in Greater Cincinnati. And in this video, I'm taking a look at the X Plus version of Batra, the only one we have, but it is a very awesome version. This is the 30 centimeter first stage crawling worm form Batra. It's a very nicely done figure by X Plus, I think. Masterfully done, actually. If you watch the movie and look at this figure, if you have it, they couldn't have done a better job. As far as the movie goes, it's probably not one of the favorite Heisei movies, I would think, but I love this character and the story of Batra, the way that it's depicted. And Batra is an old enemy of Mothra that is buried in sleep and deep in the ocean in the movie. And Batra is awoken by a meteor that crashes into the ocean bed and awakens Batra, and then he is in this form when he's awoken, the worm form. He's a very awesome looking and menacing looking kaiju. He is basically a bad version of a Mothra, because he takes forms like Mothra. He goes from the worm form into the flying form. So he's very similar in that regard to Mothra, but he is like Mothra's yin and yang. They're like yin and yang. They're opposites, because he is not in any way in favor of humanity. He when he first was around, it's 10,000-12,000 years ago, I think, is when he was first prevalent on the earth. He tried to destroy the ancient civilizations because he looked at man as a menace, and Mothra awoken to fight Batra and eventually defeat Batra, and then put Batra into his slumber, and then, of course, like I said, was awoken by the meteorite hitting deep in the ocean, and then went on from there to battle Godzilla, and then got vanquished swallowed up by a volcanic eruption in the ocean. Then he reemerged from that as the flying form Batra and started wreaking havoc again. And then Godzilla reemerges and starts attacking Japan. And then Mothra and Batra decide to, I guess, put aside differences, you could say, and team up to defeat Godzilla in the film. But Batra does, in the midst of that sacrifice, he does end up sacrificing himself and dying in the film. But his only appearance was in the 1992 film. But he was a very nicely designed kaiju, and I love the whole concept of Batra, and his look and design is really, really awesome. As far as this figure goes, of course, X Plus, 30 centimeter in scale, and I'll have couple size comparisons in a bit. It's a very nicely done figure. The tail, it attaches right in this area here, but it was pretty easy to get on. This is a reissue, diamond reissue, but it's really nicely done. The details are nice. Of course, the tail forks at the end, but he kind of, his whole body is a tail in a way, because he's a worm form. So, but as far as the end of his tail, has two big long spikes sticking out with a smaller one in the middle, and they are bone white on the very end. Then a more gold bronzish color as they go down those two spikes. The one in the middle is just a bronzing color. It's pretty nicely done, but the texturing, skin sculpting and texture on Batra all throughout his body, all up and down his body here, is very nicely done. One thing about Batra I'll say I love about this figure is his color palette is perfect. The blacks, the reds, the yellows, very prevalent all over the figure, and it's just great. And they captured Batra very well here on this figure, very, very nicely. I mean, he's very intimidating looking, because all his skin has a spiky texture, spike sticking up to it, up on his skin, all over his back here. You'll see these nice spikes sticking up off of his skin, all over the back of his head and neck here. Very spiky, looks like he's very heavily armored for fight. Very nicely done, though, this figure. If you watch the film and you look at this figure, if you have this figure, they really did a good job with this figure. His feet, of course, his crawling feet run all up and down the side of his body and up in here into by his head, pretty much. And they are a light brown in color with some black striping in them, kind of like two-toned almost, just slightly, but it's not overly bearing. The black is very faint, but if you look at them closely, you can see this black striping on them, and it's really nicely done. But otherwise, the feet here, his feet are all light brown in color. Of course, he's got the larger ones on the front right here, 3 big rows of larger feet that are prevalent on the front, and kind of like almost like his hands in a way. They're nicely done. It's nicely sculpted skin and details all over his upper torso type area here. Very nicely done. Very well sculpted figure. Nice red collar here on his upper abdomen, I would call it, below his head and mouth. It's pretty cool. Nice big old mandibles here by his mouth. And the one thing about this X Plus figure is his actual mouth opens and closes. It's open right now, and they do close like that. They do close shut. That is a posable part of this figure. I don't know if many people know that, but it is. And then of course up here on top of his head, big nice golden colored horn, yellowish golden colored horn with some red veins like in it. It's pretty cool. If you look at it through light, it's really neat looking. Pretty neat. Of course his face has the big yellow spike sticking back to the side here, very nicely done with some black highlights. Of course his mouth is nicely done. The teeth are of course run vertical, or horizontal I should say. They are bone white in color. His eyes are very elongated back toward the back of his head, but they are very menacing looking. The look on his face just looks like he is very mad, and they are red. His eyes are red in color, but it's a very nicely done figure from the tip of his tail to the tip of his horn. Of course you can see he is a really long figure. I would say at least 16 inches long, so he does take up some shelf space. But this figure does stick out on the shelf just because of his color palette. His color palette and the design of this creature, I think, by Toho was very masterfully done. They did a very good job in the concept and delivery of the Batra kaiju. And I'm glad that I own this. I know it's no longer prevalent in retailers and stuff, and I'm sure it's probably pretty high, but it's very well done sculpt. And X Plus once again shows you why they are the kings of delivering Godzilla figures and kaiju figures to us. They prove it constantly, and this here is no exception. Alright, I'll do some quick size comparisons, and let's do that right now. Alright everybody, I'm back. Here are both my Godzilla 1992s, the original release 30 centimeter, and the Sakai Godzilla 1992 30 centimeter. I think both these Godzillas scale fairly well with Batra, but in particular the original release 30 centimeter, because the Sakai of course is on the smaller scale things, but still look nice together. Pretty cool, I must say. These figures are very nicely done. No doubt X Plus knows what they're doing, folks. You can say that for sure. Alright, we'll do one more quick size comparison, and let's move on to that right now. Alright everybody, I'm back, and here is my 30 centimeter Batra with, I wanted to bring up another crawler, so I went with Anguirus 1968 30 centimeter. Both of these are 30 centimeter scale. Batra was a large kaiju, really. He was much bigger than Mothra, in my opinion. Way bigger, the Batra larva. Way bigger than Mothra. I mean, he scaled almost to Godzilla's height with this horn, you know. He was very, very big, menacing. I love this form, actually. I think I love the worm form more than the actual flying form. But these look pretty cool together. Had to bring up another crawler, since Battra is a crawler. All right, we'll move on to some quick final thoughts on Battra. Let's do that right now. All right, everybody, I'm back, and this Battra is nicely done by X Plus. Great, great figure. One of the many reasons why X Plus is number one in my view as far as kaiju, vinyl kaiju figures. I know they're pricey. I know they're sometimes ridiculously pricey, but when you get it in hand, man, most of the time for me, it's just like that thought goes away because you're just blown away by. And then if you sit down and watch the movie with the figure and you're comparing the figure to the film, you just see, a lot of times you'll see the pose from the film, like the 62 Favorite Sculptors Line second version, the walking one. You see that pose in that movie when he's walking, when they're trying to trap him, when they build the trap and they set the fire in the lake and they're driving him toward the trap. That figure, that pose was caught from that particular scene. And I seen it right away, and I think Leslie Chambers seen it as well when he did his review. We both pointed out the same thing, that it's from that exact moment in the film. And X Plus does that a lot. They really capture Godzilla or these other kaiju in grand style, and this is no exception. I think this is a knockout for a Batra figure. I feel if they ever do a flying Batra, they're really going to have to do something to outdo this, in my opinion, because this is the consummate Batra figure ever released, in my opinion. It's just wonderfully done by X Plus. And if you are a Batra fan, I would highly recommend trying to find one. I don't know what they go for nowadays, but they're a really great figure. This figure really, really is. You can see how big it is, the length, its height. It just has a shelf presence. The color palette presents a really cool shelf presence on the shelf. His actual size is surprisingly big, and he's a really nicely done figure. I would highly recommend adding this if you're an X Plus collector and you can afford the resource and the time. Add this to your collection. You will not be disappointed in Batra. All right, everybody. I want to take a quick moment to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. As of this filming, this is actually Christmas Eve morning. And I'm preparing to go to my brother's house for Christmas celebration this afternoon and evening. And I just hope everyone has a safe holiday, safe travels. And I appreciate everyone that tunes in and supports my channel. And if you have a comment, you can comment below, like the video. This is Phil the Kaiju King from my collection room in Greater Cincinnati. And me and Batra wish you all a very nice holiday. I'll talk to you later.